Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most controversial and emotional topics of the modern world, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. This isn't just a date in history. It's the climax of centuries of longing, decades of political maneuvering, and years of brutal conflict. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Zionism began, why the British got involved, the role of the Holocaust, the United Nations plan, and what really happened in 1948 and after. Let's start at the beginning. Ancient roots, exile, and diaspora. The Jewish people trace their origins back to ancient Israel, over 3,000 years ago. Jerusalem, the temple, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, it's all in the Torah and other historical records. But in 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple and forced the Jews into exile. This begins the long period called the diaspora, where Jews spread across Europe, North Africa, and Middle East. For the next 2,000 years, Jews lived as minorities, often facing discrimination, pogroms, and persecution. So, why is this important? Because the memory of the land of Israel never faded. It stayed alive in prayers, songs, and identity. Next year in Jerusalem wasn't just symbolic, it was real. The birth of Zionism. By the late 1800s, life was getting harder for Jews in Europe. In Eastern Europe, pogroms were common. In Western Europe, anti-Semitism lingered. Then came Theodor Herzl, an Austrian Jewish journalist. He looked around and said, "We need a country of our own." This was the birth of political Zionism, a movement to re-establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine, the biblical land of Israel. Why Palestine? Because it wasn't just historical, it was symbolic, emotional, and spiritual. Early Zionists began buying land and settling in what was then part of the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't easy. The land was tough. Resources were few, and the Arab population, already living there, grew wary of the newcomers. But the movement grew. World War I and the British Mandate. Then came World War I. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Britain took control of Palestine under the League of Nations. In 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration. His Majesty's government view would favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. To Jews, this was hope. To Palestinian Arabs, this was betrayal. They were the majority, and nobody had asked them. From 1920 to 1947, Britain tried to manage rising tensions, but it got worse. More Jews immigrated, especially fleeing rising fascism in Europe. Arabs rioted. Jews formed underground militias. Britain, stuck in the middle, started backing out. The Holocaust changes everything. And then, World War II. The Nazis murdered 6 million Jews in Holocaust. The world was stunned. Suddenly, the idea of a Jewish homeland felt not just important, but urgent. Jews had nowhere to go. Western countries had turned away refugees during the war. Palestine became a beacon of survival. But the British overwhelmed and pressured, limited Jewish immigration even as survivors sat in refugee camps. Jewish militias like Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi turned against the British. It became a guerrilla war. Train bombings, attacks, retaliations. The world watched. The UN Partition Plan. In 1947, the British gave up and handed the problem to the United Nations. The UN proposed a two-state solution, a Jewish state, an Arab state, and Jerusalem under international control. Jews, exhausted and desperate, said yes. Arabs, who made up over half the population, said no. To them, this was colonialism all over again. Why give half their land to a group that had just arrived in large numbers? Conflict erupted. Civil war broke out in Palestine between Jews and Arabs. The British prepare to leave. Israel declares independence. On May 14, 1948, one day before the British Mandate officially ended, David Ben-Gurion declared, "We hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel." There were cheers and tears. But the next day, 5 Arab countries invaded: Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. It was the beginning of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the first Arab-Israeli War. The war lasted nearly a year. Against all odds, Israel survived and won. It not only defended its land, it captured more than the UN had allotted. But here's the cost. Over 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fled or were expelled. Entire villages were destroyed. Refugee camps popped up across Gaza, Lebanon, Jordan, and the West Bank. This event, known to Palestinians as Al-Nakba, the catastrophe, remains one of the most painful wounds in Middle Eastern history. The aftermath and legacy. Israel became a member of the UN. Jewish immigrants arrived from all over the world, many from Arab countries where Jews were no longer safe. But the Palestinian refugees? They were not allowed to return, and they still wait, generations later, in refugee camps and diaspora. To this day, the 1948 war is a core root of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Borders remain contested. Jerusalem is divided in belief, if not in administration, and peace remains elusive. The creation of Israel is a story of survival and trauma, of dreams and displacements. To Israelis, it marks a return from exile and a national rebirth. To Palestinians, it marks loss, injustice, and occupation. Both narratives are real, both are emotional, and both must be understood. History is not just about facts, it's about people. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's keep learning. Let's keep asking questions. Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk.